The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now.
And welcome to The Factor Uncensored. He's now being called racist, bigoted, offensive, and shameful. People are talking about a Cypress Fairbanks school board member after remarks he made during a school board work session this week. Defying all national studies and trends, Scott Henry justified why he believes there is no disparity for black students in his district. And there was no need for spending on an assistant superintendent for diversity and inclusion in the district. He even went so far as to say that there is no proof that hiring more black teachers would benefit the performance of students. He points out where there are more black teachers, the dropout rate goes up. Take a listen for yourself.
But Cy-Fair has, what, 13% black teachers? I know you mentioned that earlier. Do you know what the statewide average is for black teachers?
Not at this moment, sir.
10%.
You can get that information.
10%. I looked it up. The statewide average for black teachers is 10%. Houston ISD, which I'll use the shine example, you know what their average number of percentage of black teachers is? 36%. I looked that up. You know what their dropout rate is? 4%. I don't want to be 4%. I don't want to be HISD.
And our guests are here on The Factor Uncensored tonight to talk about this school board member that has all of us talking. First, Chris Tritico, you represent the teachers union in that particular district. Your response to hearing Scott Henry's comment involving black teachers?
I've represented the interest of teachers for over 30 years, and this is the most inappropriate, disgusting thing I've ever heard a school board member say, and I've appeared in school boards all over the great state of Texas. He needs to resign because he cannot represent the interest of the voters of the Cy-Fair Independent School District any longer, and it's obvious that he never did. You cannot be this divisive this early in your tenure, and you can't do it at all. But when you're leading a school district, to say something like this, to show your stripes like this filters down, and you can't. The education of these children is forever tarnished now because of him and his comments.
Let's bring in Dr. John Ogletree, who is a former school board member there. Are you shocked by this latest development involving Mr. Henry, Dr. Ogletree?
I wish I could say that I was shocked, but during the campaign and the platform that he and others ran on, it opened the door for such positions and statements like this, which really do not represent our district.
And do you think at this point he should continue on, he should resign, apologize? What would be sufficient to you, Dr. Ogletree?
Well, he's not going to resign. I think Mr. Henry should, to get credibility, he should make a strong apology. He should state in clear terms that he made a mistake, that it was wrong, and to take that position to alienate the African-American people in our community is just wrong. He was elected to represent the whole district, not a segment of the district. We run at large. All our board members run at large. And our motto in our district is opportunity for all. That includes every ethnic group, every race, every creed, every color. And he has to understand that he's in office to represent everyone, and we can't have this. If he should apologize, if he doesn't, I agree with the demands for resignation.
Let's bring in Jolanda Jones, who've had the trust of the people sitting on HISD's school board. When you hear a school board member talk like that, Jolanda, your thoughts on a situation like this?
So my thoughts are, first of all, he can't apologize because we know who he is, right? If he apologizes, I believe that it's not from the depths of his soul, it's because he got caught. One. Two, what he's doing is unconstitutional. You cannot discriminate against people because of their race. And he just put it out there for the whole world to know that he feels that Black people and Black teachers are inferior to him, right? I don't know what the demographic is inside FAIR, but I'm certain they have a lot of minority students, and representation is important, right? So it's important for Black kids to see Black teachers, right? And as I listened to what I saw on Twitter, like he's like, oh, we've got, you know, the state average is 10%, we've got 13%, blah, blah, blah. I still haven't figured out how he made a cogent, analytical, logical argument that Black teachers are the reason for 4% dropout rate in HISD. And let me be clear. One reason that people of color and Black people in particular drop out is because, one, they give us substandard access to education. Like all you have to do is look at the schools in inner city Houston and see how they have less than certain other schools, which is a whole nother show for this. But you have people who are homeless. You have people whose parents are working overtime. You have people who are transportation challenged. You have people who have to help their parents earn a living and work. It has nothing to do with the teachers. You have kids who go to school hungry. I was one of those kids sometimes. And so people drop out all the time, or children drop out all the time, and it has nothing to do with the teacher. He's just flat out racist. He needs to resign. And people definitely need to show him out the door the next time he runs, if he stays in office. But if I were a resident of Cy-Fair and I paid taxes, every decision that he voted on where Black people were impacted negatively, whether it's the Black kids, whether it's the Black, I would sue, right? Because it is a 1983 violation to discriminate based on race. So I'm not surprised, because after Trump, racist people feel carte blanche to say whatever it is they want to say, and they can get away with it, right? So I hope and I wish and I pray that pressure is put on him, right? Because he believes he's better because he's white, and he believes we're not because we're Black, and he holds us responsible for kids dropping out. And that's flat out illogical, irrational, unreasonable, and it's unconstitutional. And he needs to take himself to the door and he needs to leave.
Now, Cy-Fair ISD has declined to comment on Henry's statement. He maintains that he was defending the district from a political organization from outside of Texas that accused the district of failing its students. Now, Henry released a lengthy statement. He said, in part, quote, "This political organization claimed that one metric, the percent of Black teachers in our schools, determine the quality of education our students receive. I was simply refuting that by pointing out important metrics that should also be taken into account." This conversation is not over yet. We'll get back to it after the break. Stay with us.
If I go back to the actual numbers of the report, I show on here that of the Black students, only 5,134 students are Black, and only 200,006, or 4% of the entire Black population, have actually been on intuition in school suspensions. So that number looks big and scary, 55%, but really that's not a big number if you look at the total population of the school district.
Wow, that's another clip of Cy-Fair ISD board member Scott Henry as he defended that increased diversity in his school district would not help create better students. Here he argued that statistics showing Black students were disproportionately sent to school suspension was a fabrication. Now we hear from an activist and mother on our panel who says no one should be shocked by this rhetoric.
Sherry Dorr, let's bring you into this conversation. Representing Black Lives Matter, your thoughts on hearing a school board member talk like this?
I wish I could say I was surprised, but kind of piggybacking off of what Jolanda said, he can apologize all he wants, but this is how he feels. He's also been one of the individuals that was like strongly against the critical race theory argument earlier, or I guess late last year. So if you take a look at his social media, it's not surprising to see that this type of bile would like flood out of his mouth. However, I don't think an apology is going to be enough. I think he also needs to show himself out the door as well, because he is not representing. And this is also, it's so important for people to get out there and vote. Like, understand who you guys are voting for, especially where it concerns our children moving forward. We've got to get out there and make sure that we do not allow people like this to be able to come in and treat. I mean, what he brings up black teachers like it was no big deal to him, and he was so flagrant with it. And it's very disturbing because, you know, to me, this was just pure out racism that was let out. And he's just very lucky that my children are not students of Cy-Fair ISD.
University of Oregon, PSU, Oregon State, talking about $218,000 for some D&I. $1.5 million in staff costs, overrun. Taxpayers are being costed this overrun cost over and over again, and yet the numbers of Oregon universities are going down over and over again. SATs are going down. Terrible, awful.
That's the moment Cy-Fair ISD board member offered data on Oregon to the board that he claimed backs up the idea that an assistant superintendent of diversity and inclusion isn't worth the money. Now, Scott Hendry's comments lasted beyond 10 minutes. As our panel discussion continues, we ask what can be done if he doesn't resign.
Bishop James Dixon, NAACP here in Houston, your thoughts about this school board member, Scott Henry, and the comments he made.
Thank you, Isaiah, to the entire panel. Thank each of you for your perspectives. Scott Henry is a blight on public education. He does need to be removed. And let me say this, the people who voted for him are responsible for him being there. It's very important that we deal with that. I don't think all the people who voted for him being naive. This individual did not make this comment as a first-time comment in his life. Let's be mindful. He's made comments in social settings, in private settings, and he has people to support him because they support that ideology and his convictions. The voters of Cy-Fair need to take a stand publicly to say either you do or you do not represent your constituents and your voters. The board of Cy-Fair needs to take a unanimous vote to disassociate themselves from the comments of this particular board member. And I'm glad Chris is on the line, critical. Yes, the union needs to take a stand as well. Black educators have been sterling in this community and in that state. And for this man to put that kind of scar, that kind of blemish on the reputation of African-American educators in 2021 is deplorable, despicable, it's ignorant, it's shameful, but it does not belong in public office and it needs to be dealt with.
Now, Chris, you have worked with school districts around the state. What can be done besides him resigning? What action can the school board take? What recall efforts, if any, could parents take in Cy-Fair?
Well, certainly the school board can and should have last night and failed to, but can take action to publicly distance themselves from his comment, and I hope they will. They can take a vote to censure him, if you will, publicly, and I hope that they will take that strong stand in the interim, at least, to show the public that they do not stand for this. There is no correlation between what he said in the truth. Black educators all over this state and all over this country are doing yeoman's work in educating our youth, and he's just flat wrong. Now, with respect to a petition for recall, that's pretty hard to do in Texas, and I don't know that that's going to be a short run thing to get done. And with an attorney general that we have, I don't see any help coming from him. And so we may be stuck with this guy for the whole term that he's in office. So it may be up to the school board to rein this guy in with their own votes and their own procedures until something can be done.
Dr. Ogletree, what are people saying in the community there? Obviously, you were on the school board until the November election. How are people responding to Scott Henry's remarks there?
There's a lot of anger, a lot of disdain. There are conversations going all over this community on what to do and what action to take. At the same time, I want you to know, Isaiah, that this board is considering working an equity audit. We had an equity audit. Our district was moving in the direction of diversity and making sure that we supported an equitable approach to education, meeting every educational need of every student. Scott Henry and the other two board members who were elected are against that. And right now, they are considering trying to rework, work the language of that, or to not do the audit. In fact, Mr. Henry stated that the data from the equity study was junk. But it shows a great need in our district to go after meeting every educational need of every student. So this is going to be in the forefront the next few weeks and months in our district.
Scott Henry's comments were so disgusting and disturbing that the mayor of Houston is now issuing a statement. Mayor Sylvester Turner saying, in part, quote, suggesting that having more black teachers in a school district can create an increase in the dropout rate or a decline in classroom achievement is despicable. The rich diversity that resides in our city and region unites us more than ever. We wrap up this conversation after the break about what seems to be a lack of a filter from ultra-conservative politicians. That's next. And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. Whether it's board member Scott Henry in Cy-Fair ISD or other high-profile conservative politicians, there has been a change in tone when it comes to the far right wing in how they speak about anything, but particularly minorities. That's where we pick back up with our panel tonight.
And Jolanda, let's get back to a point that you brought up earlier. What we have seen in recent years is an atmosphere where mainly ultra-conservative elected officials will say anything they feel and have been in the past been racist, from Marjorie Taylor Greene to the activist here in Texas, Shelley Luther, who recently just said last week that Chinese students should not be allowed into Texas universities because they will bring communism. There seems to be a movement where we're seeing more and more conservative candidates showing signs of racism publicly without any retribution from the public.
Well, so I can tell you, Isaiah, that, you know, back when we had the civil rights movement, and I would respectfully submit to you that we're still fighting for our civil rights, right? So back then they knew, oh, we can't say it. They just thought it, right? Then comes Trump. You know, people went to sleep, woke up, a black man was president, and they have lost their minds, right? Mm-hmm. And also just straight numbers wise, right? White males are losing their power. They're not having as many kids. And so the people of color's populations are growing. And so they're doing anything and everything to try to hold on to their power. One of which is to make sure that only the people who agree with them, that they are the superior race, which I absolutely disagree with. And those are the people that are getting elected in the primaries for Republicans. So if you're not spewing that Trump rhetoric, then you're not going to get elected in Republican primaries. And in places that are Republican, like Republican districts, the big race is in the primary. So the person that wins in the primary is going to skate on to victory in November, and that's what happens. So what we have to do, people who are our allies and Black people and other people of color, is we've got to speak truth to power, and we've got to challenge racism every single solitary time we see it, like a heat-seeking missile. Because there could be someone in a conversation, right, and they're just listening, and they hear somebody say something uber racist, but like the Black person or the other people don't say something because people would rather stuff not be uncomfortable. And then that person will be like, well, maybe that was an okay statement because nobody said anything. So when people wonder why I go after racists like heat-seeking missiles, this is exactly why. Because people wonder, how did Hitler get elected? He was saying all this anti-Semitic stuff. He was saying all this anti-blonde-haired, blue-eyed white people stuff, and no one said anything. Next thing you know, it brought all the people who had inferiority out. They thought they were better. They looked like him or whatever. And then you have Hitler exterminating whole races. So my point is, we have not overcome. Just because President Obama was president does not mean we've made it to the mountaintop. And we have to fight harder than ever because in 2021, we have had our civil rights move back. We've got a Supreme Court that is racist, and they're voting along ideological lines. In Texas, we're extremely vulnerable because we have a bunch of right-wing ideologues on most of the courts up to the Texas Supreme Court and the Court of Criminal Appeals, which means that they're going to affirm verdicts, whether civil or criminal, that keep people of color locked up. So
All right.
you wonder
Really quick,
why.
Jolanda, I want to follow up on something you said with Mr. Tritico and Dr. Ogletree. When Scott Henry made these comments at the meeting Monday night, did any other school board member intervene or say anything, Chris or Dr. Ogletree, either one of you privy to that information?
No one said anything. No one responded at all.
My understanding is that after he said it, one of the board members tried to rein it back a little bit, but there wasn't any significant statement by any board member. And there certainly wasn't a vote by the board to censure this comment or do anything about it. And that's what's so disturbing, is that the remainder of the board would sit basically silent and let this happen and do nothing. And they have the opportunity to do something, and I hope they will.
Isaiah, that's why I made the point earlier that the board needs to be challenged to hold this board member accountable. The board needs to be challenged. Take a vote. Do you support his comments or do you not support his comments? We can, and that the NAACP is going to be pushing for that, along with citizens, along with voters. The board cannot be allowed to wait to see what they decide to do. We've got to give them the challenge. Do you vote yes, we support, or do you vote no, we don't support his comments, and distance yourself from those comments and make it clear that his views do not represent theirs.
Now, the next Sci-Fi ISD board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. If you'd like to voice your opinion about the comments Henry made, you need to sign up for public comments between 5:30 and 5:50 tomorrow at the boardroom at 10300 Jones Road. The meeting starts at 6. You can also stream online on the district's website. Our panelist, Chris Tritico, by the way, is also the Fox 26 senior legal analyst.